things that I really don't like to talk about is death. Death of anything, really, either animal or people. It's just one of those subjects that I rather avoid. And you're probably thinking, well, that's a very contradicting thing because you have a farm and we know what happens in farms and that how animals are being used in different methods or in different ways for different purposes. The beginning process of actually the kidding season is breeding your does and making sure that they take. If they don't, then you put them back and you try to rebreed them. I had to do that with Annabelle because I caught her at the last part of her heat cycle at the end of December, so I had to do that recently. And so that's just the beginning. It's exciting because you can sit down and put a date in your calendar and start planning, and at least to me that's part of the thrill, to start planning what's going to happen and the changes that are going to happen. After they hit the 3-month point, then you can start to feel for babies. And I like to bond not only with my does at that point, but also talk to the babies in a way that I don't really know if this is true, but I can tell you that I used to talk to the babies, like Annabelle's and Mocha's babies last summer, and when they were born, I felt like we had a different connection, like they would come to my voice and all the things that maybe some other people say, well, it's just because they're baby goats and they like people.
How are you doing? You know, Belly? Let me see Belly. Hi, Billy. Hi, baby. Stop it, Annie. Hi, babies. Hi, sweet children. Oh my goodness, why is everyone so
Just that.
needy?
But I like to make that connection when they are 3 months old, start feeling for babies, move their bellies around, feel where the babies are, kind of guess what is a hoof, what is this, what is that, even though I have no idea. All I know is that it's a baby. Then about a month before they're kidding, I start what I call my nesting period, where I'm going through my kitten box and making sure that I have everything, or putting things on my Amazon list, or checking my local feed store to see if they have what I need, and just trying to be ready, even though I am praying inside that all I have to do is some iodine for those umbilical cords, maybe a syringe bulb or something to clear their noses, but that's all I want to use for when they are kidding. Part of that nesting period, it always involves, or at least the last 2 times, getting ready for the babies, making their kidding pens cozy and making sure they have everything they need. The kidding pen for some people is just somewhere where you can put your dough with the babies, which is basically the main purpose of it. But it's also for us the place where we bond with those babies and we try to make them comfortable with humans, because if they're boys, they're gonna end up going to somewhere as a pet. Some of them will. And if they're girls, you want to make that connection, that bond, and them able to trust people, so you make it easier for the next owner not to have to struggle with a wilder goat or a little goat that is not gonna let you catch it. I've seen way too many posts on Facebook that says, sweet doe, it's for sale. She's a sweet doe once you catch her, and that's why we spend so much time. So in the first 3 days after they're born, they stay with their mom and we help them bond in that period, and at the same time bond with us. It is not really hard for us to spend a lot of time in the kidding pen with the babies. It really is an enjoyable part of the process. My kids, my husband, and I, we all love and we take turns to go and pet and hold those babies in order to make them a little bit more friendly. The last 2 weeks are the hardest, really, because I remember when Mocha and Annabelle were pregnant, and it was the first time that I was going to go through it with them. I had these terrible nightmares where they had their babies in the middle of the night, and I woke up the next morning to go check on them, and I could find babies in sacks. So the last 2 weeks for me were pretty terrifying last time, which take me to the sad story that if you remember, we kept Gaia and Briere. They are Mocha's twin girls that she had August 2nd of last year. So they're going to be 6 months old this February. Because of that, I knew that if I was going to keep them, I needed to have another buck or be able to find another buck that would service them. Now, in the back of my head, I was thinking I don't need another buck, but I also know that even if I keep Taz to line breed, if I think that he's good enough, I still would need something different, like another non-related buck, because they are all related somehow with the little girl. So they're kind of half brothers, half sisters to each other. So I started to look, and I found Twin Pears Farm, and she had one of these superior genetics girls, great pedigree, Layla. And her mom, Karina, I was just trying to look at the name because it's spelled differently. She took third place in her class at nationals this past 2021. And her daughter, Layla's daughter, was 2 times grand champion in this past year. So she has produced not only amazing does, but she comes from a great pedigree. And, she was expecting, and she was going to have her babies on January 29th. So I was super excited for a buckling out of that amazing pairing from Twin Pear Farms, which, by the way, I'm gonna have their channel linked down below. They have amazing tutorials. If you want to know anything about how to do anything about dairy goats, they are the people that you should follow. But anyways, apparently Layla went into labor last night, and this morning you could see her this little bubble that is attached to the placenta, and when checking for babies, they were not there. And apparently later on, the babies were found in the middle of the pasture. Now, Layla was bred, and she was supposed to be kidding on January 29th, which means that these babies were about 10 days early. Because of that, they were both deceased. She had twin bucklings, and one of those bucklings was going to be our boy and the sire that we were looking into to breed our girls. So a lot of people, I feel like we always go there, like, why weren't in the kidding pen? Why weren't they, why wasn't she inside a kidding pen, and why wasn't she? But if you have any goats, you know how stressful it can be for some of them to be separated from the herd. And even if you put a companion, you make things better for them, but really you just can't help it. They're gonna suffer because they want to be outside. They have a routine, they have their friends, they have the things that they want to do. So once you put them inside in a kidding pen, in my humble opinion, with whatever experience I have with goats, I feel like it's either a goat that has trouble kidding, or that maybe is close, or that she's she's showing you some signs of something. But if not, I think it'd be safe to leave them in or leave them out of the kidding pen until they lose their ligaments. And with 10 days that she still had to go, it only made sense that she really didn't have to be inside a kidding pen or be locked up inside a barn that was going to be warmer than being outside. But being cold in January, it just only makes sense that they would have had a better chance of staying alive if they would have found them, or if she was inside locked up. But again, you can't lock up a goat an entire month or 10 days before she's going to kid. It's just not fair to the animal, and this is one of those things that was meant to happen, and because of that, there was a death in the farm. So long story short, we don't have our sweet little buckling that I was dreaming about from Layla and that amazing pairing and genetics. So the solution, I guess, for that problem is that we're getting one of Layla's daughter's kid. She's a first freshener, so they are going, or at least at Twin Pearl Farms, they're going to make sure she has the udder that she's supposed to, which is what I want, a good udder. And that way I can just make sure that we are just improving genetics and bringing new blood to our herd. It really broke my heart what happened. I mean, these are what I called, pros, at what they do. And they have figured out the right nutrition. They've been doing it forever. They have great genetics. They have the infrastructure. I mean, they are ready for, everything that they're taking in with their herd. So for this to happen to a herd that was ready and that I call them the pros in the industry, it really kind of shows you, and that's why I felt the need to share this with you. I've been teasing the idea that we were gonna bring somebody new to the farm, and I just couldn't wait. I couldn't wait for that to happen, and I was just so excited with this new possibility. I was seeing how Layla was growing and how pretty she was looking, and it was such a aha moment. This is exactly what I need to do, and this is the right people to do it because they've been doing it forever. They have it down to a T. They know their systems, they know everything. So this technically would never happen to them, right? Well, it just goes to show us that sometimes nature just plays you a wild card, and you just have to deal with whatever is thrown your way. And in this case, I feel only terrible for Layla having to go through that process alone, and I'm sure that as a goat owner you wonder if you could have done something different, if you missed something, but I just can't even think about that possibility. And when it happens, because it's not if, but when it happens, if anything like that happens, or when there's a death in our farm, or when there's a loss in our farm, I just want to remind myself, look back at this video and remind myself that you can know everything. You can have every single knowledge about goats and raising goats, and you can have everything that you need as far as medicine, as far as infrastructure, as far as room, but things can still go wrong. And it's, to me, this was kind of a taking all that in was kind of hard, and just putting myself in these people's shoes, knowing myself that I am very attached to the animals. I know they're not going to live forever. I understand that, but I really don't want to think about those things. But then when something like this happens, kind of reminds you, we're not invincible. This is going to happen to all of us. Death is just part of life. But in the end, I still see people wondering or asking me, why do you do it? I mean, why do you want to go through the heartache and the sad times of, going through that and being responsible for so many lives, either whatever they are, the livestock. Why do you want to put yourself through that if that's such a terrible thing for you to go through? And I think my answer is always the same, because death is going to happen no matter what. If you're there or if you're not there, it's going to happen. So learning to cope with things and learning to find ways to understand that it's part of the cycle, I think it's not only going to help me in my little farm adventures, but it's also going to teach me a very a much bigger lesson that I think is going to be a little bit more deeper than what happens in a farm. And I think that in the end, if I want to try to finish this in a happier note, I think that experiencing that, it's hard. You go through it, you're sad, you are mourning, and some people, when they lose their pets, which is different from livestock, but when they lose their pets, it takes them years to go, to get over it or to move on from it. But in the end, I think that once we go through losses, and I'm saying this from experience, you kind of learn to value life a little bit more, and that you are the pilot in your own life, and that you have to find that route or that place that is going to make you happy. And I'm not talking about that place in like a place, even though that could be part of your happiness, but I'm just saying that mental space, that mental spot that that makes you happy wherever you are. So appreciating or going through death, which sadly I had to go through it a few times in my life, and from people that were very close to me, I think it taught me that I needed to get out of where I was living, move to the country, do something different with my life. I remember being sick in my bed, or in a hospital bed, in 2017 during what was this? It was Thanksgiving week. I was in the hospital with an infection that people didn't think I was going to make it, and I remember thinking, God, please don't let this be the end. I have so much that I want to do, and I could almost hear God saying, then get to it. You're just wasting your life and not doing anything that makes you happy, going through the motions, doing the things that society tells you that you should be doing to be happy. But if you're not happy, then move on. That's exactly what we did. We changed completely, like 180 turn, and we moved to the country. We moved to raw land. We moved 800 miles away. We actually got our entire family, even though my older kids are grown-ups, and we moved here. And I just can't see my life anywhere else. And we had so many struggles and so many things that I can sit here and complain to you about, but I really don't feel like it, because I feel so overwhelmed with the amount of good things that had happened, and all the blessings and all the things that really makes really the hard times little compared to the enormous blessing, or the giant blessing that's been moving to the middle of nowhere and being in a community that, as I mentioned before recently, if you haven't watched that video, I'll link it on the top of the screen, but that a community that has received us, that has given us purpose, that has really changed our entire lives. So because of that, I can't really complain. We have to go through the harder times to appreciate the good ones, and I'm appreciating the good ones, all right, especially after what happened to a little baby boy. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for staying from my ramblings. I know that every once in a while I just want to sit down and talk to you guys about random things, but I thought that in this case was very important information to share, because sometimes we go through life as a numbing medication. We're not happy, we're not sad, we're not excited, we're not depressed. It's like a flat line that's happening in our lives, and in the end, we're not going one way or the other. And that's not balance, that's actually just going through the motions. So I hope that you take that one step. If you feel like you're going in that flat line, if you're thinking that you're just in that numbing line, that you realize that there's more to life and that you can actually find something different to do with your life if you're not happy exactly where you are. I'm gonna tell you that 5 years ago, if you would have told me that, let's say 7 years ago, if you would have told me that I would be living in the middle of nowhere, that I would have sold my house, sold everything that I had to move to the middle of nowhere, to live off grid, to start from nothing, I would have said, you're crazy. That's not gonna make me happy. But life has a funny way to show you that sometimes you have no idea what makes you happy.